can identify the validation state, can identify the validation state and apply effects. That's great, that's good. That means you don't need to manually write the effects. They can by default handle the validations and display the messages. So form state or input state, at both levels we can manage the validations. So by using these classes we can configure classes, we can define them. Generally we need to apply some classes, so manually we need to apply the classes. For example, suppose for name and mobile like fields here, I want to display the error for this text box. That means text box should be in red color. Along with that message, those text boxes also should highlight. Text boxes also should highlight. Actually, CSS3, if you know CSS3 is having predefined validations classes. For example, I will go to the CSS file. So in the CSS file, CSS3 is having predefined validation classes. Like if you write input, if input is, we have like valid. So if input is valid, then some border, so 2 pixel, so solid, so dark cyan like this, or say green like this. And if input is invalid, then border, so 2 pixel, solid red like this. Similarly, we have if input is required, we have all of this. CSS3 has some advanced options. Some CSS3 onwards, you can simply configure these and use them. That means what they will do is they identify the state, input state, so whether it is valid or invalid. And you can see they are displayed with those colors. And I am typing the message here. So that means I am entering John. That means it is green color. I am typing the valid mobile number, then it is in green color. That means we don't need to wait. Of course, these are custom. We need to write a condition for them again, right? So here we don't need to wait. Suppose I remove that, then it is again red color. We don't need to wait till the message is displayed. That means now the message will be displayed when I click on submit. Before the message submit, we can show the messages. So this is possible from the early version from CSS. This is possible from CSS. So earlier in CSS, we don't have these attributes. So these are the new attributes into CSS. That's the reason now Angular, instead of CSS, Angular has its own validation classes. We can use them. What are the Angular validation classes? So you can use these CSS classes, or Angular has validation classes. You can use them. Angular validation classes so are like this. Generally, Angular has validation classes, a set of validation classes. So the class name and description. If you know CSS, you don't need these actually. We can directly apply through that. ng valid dot ng pristine dot ng dirty dirty, .ng touched, .ng untouched. These are all class. We have form state also. Form state validation, so valid, invalid, all this, right? Ng, invalid. So description is very simple. So for all of them, description is same. So all of them description is same. You know what they are actually. Description is apply effects on specific state. They will apply the effects on that particular state. For example, how do we write this actually? How do we write this? So CSS have them. So, but you can write in this way. That means form state or input state. Suppose input. If input here we use ng, so input ng hyphen valid. So that is, if input field is having a valid, ng valid, that means you can see that it will apply this class called ng valid. For input, it will apply the class ng valid. And on valid, what we have to do is, we have to put a border as 2 pixel solid, some green, that is valid. Similarly, if input.ng invalid, so invalid, then border, so 2 pixel solid and red color, like this. So we can configure the messages in this way. That means what is the specialty of these classes is, they identify the state of validation, whether it is valid or invalid or pristine or touched, untouched, they will identify that. So, and based on that, it can display the message and display the colors. That means you don't need to apply any CSS inside these elements, So you can configure in this way. You can see now we have red color for this, and I am entering some John, so still it is invalid. So when I entered John, now it is green. Now I am entering mobile correctly, then it is green. So for custom and other validations, we need to write, because these are custom validations. For custom validations, we need to write our own. So for custom validation, these validation states will not work because you have written your own validation. What is the specialty of these classes? You can apply those classes. We can apply those classes. So the advantage is these classes can identify the state, and according to the state, they can apply the effects. That is the ability of these classes. So just you need to add only this part in your CSS. So to display the effects, you need to just add this. That means you have to go to, so input validation dot component dot CSS, and here you have to add this. So without this also you can manage. So for that you need a CSS. So you can handle in this way also. You can say input. So input, and input is valid. Then what effects you want? Similarly, input is invalid. So what effects you want? But of course, you don't have, you can't identify whether it is modified or not, whether it is dirty or not, pristine, dirty, touched. For those, these classes will be helpful. For valid, invalid, required, optional, disabled, enabled, all of them we have CSS. So, you know, now from Bootstrap 5 onwards, you don't need even jQuery also. Bootstrap 5 is eliminating jQuery also.